And I'm now joined by Paul Tonkei Kesery, a Senior Manager, Classroom Africa, to further discuss the International Education Day. Paul, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. What exactly is the significance of the International Education Day?
Thank you so much for having me. First of all, it's important for the viewers to note that education is a fundamental human right, just like food, just like shelter. So, and without an access to an equitable and inclusive education, countries will not be able to attain sustainable development, and populations will not be able to break the cycle of poverty that has left millions of children, millions of youth and adults behind. So globally, before the pandemic, more than 258 million children globally were out of school. And even with those numbers that are in school, more than 600 million children and adolescents were not able to read or even do some basic mathematics. So this brings in an aspect of poor quality of education that's being offered across schools globally. At the sub-Saharan Africa, for example, more than a fifth of children between the ages of 6 and 11 were out of school. So this is probably the highest proportion of out-of-school children globally. And so this important day, the International Education Day, being commemorated for the third time globally today, it helps in reminding the international community and the duty bearers of the citizens across the different countries globally that we need to step up solidarity, we need to step up collaboration and partnerships to ensure that by 2030, all children at least, and I'm using at least, complete free primary and secondary education.
So the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely had an adverse effect on learning in 2020 particularly. And you mentioned those numbers of 250 million children out of school in 2020. So how important is the day at this time of the coronavirus pandemic, which has seen many students missing out on schooling over the last year?
Indeed, this day is critical, is very, very important and really timely for us because COVID-19 has led to what we're calling a silent global education crisis that has far longer lasting impact on populations, probably more than COVID itself. I mean, the adverse effects of a population missing an education are irretrievable. During the pandemic, you could have numbers of more than 1.6 billion children, as you just put it, that who have missed school for more than 1 year now. I mean, and the discovery of the new strains in the virus, who knows? There's a possibility of probably learning institutions remaining closed for more than 1 year or more. So with this year's theme of the International Education Day, which brings in the aspect of trying to recover and revitalize education for COVID-19 generations, there is need to improve ICT infrastructure across countries to promote online learning. There's need to improve the state in the learning institutions across countries to help meet the basic requirements in terms of helping to spread the virus. So probably having additional shelters in school, improving the sanitation facilities in school, and there's also probably need to improve the capacity of the teaching staff, the non-teaching staff to be able to accommodate the new normal. So at this point in time, we are calling upon the donors, well-wishers, development corporations and governments to be able to partner with the rest of the development partners in the efforts to ensuring that our children access an education amidst the pandemic. And I could quote, for instance, organizations like the African Wildlife Foundation, for instance, where I work in, they've been trying to support, through support from the donors, have been trying to support communities and schools that are adjacent to wildlife habitats in Africa, in 8 countries in Africa, to eat that we have access to an education in the midst of COVID for children who are in such vulnerable populations. So if we're able to step up right. efforts as together across the globe, then we will try to ensure that at least learners are able to access an education with this pandemic.
Talk to us about that new normal, Paul, because you mentioned that the pandemic, the crisis, has exposed some of the loopholes in the education sector. There is need to improve on ICT, for instance, and improve the general state of learning in some schools, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. How do you see the future of education going forward, given the current challenges?
Yes, and I mean, first of all, many children will not return to school. That's a sad state of affairs that we are in, because basically, if I already mentioned the ones that were not in school before COVID. So with COVID in place, we already are trying to look at a situation whereby many children will not return to school. So with that kind of a scenario, especially in low and middle income economies, and especially those ravaged with war and extreme poverty, it calls for the governments and the international community to step up efforts to trying to ensure that children who will be at the risk of dropping out are reached out to, and ensuring that there are available infrastructure to keep the ones that are in school safe. Secondly, distance learning opportunities like education technology, the use of radios, TV, mobile phones, etc., could help in ensuring that there's continuity in learning. However, it will be very, very key also to ensure that when we are trying to do that, we do not create inequalities. We do not exacerbate the learning inequalities that are already happening. So as we bring in the new normal and the new ways of doing things in schools, we should try to ensure that the children from vulnerable populations, the children from the very, very, very poor countries across the globe are also able to attend and have an education even in the midst of this.
All right, Paul Tonkei Kesery joining us there via Zoom with that update on education and its challenges.